Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, mothers, fathers, daughters, sons, brothers, and sisters. We are back for another season of the Armed Forces Virtual Racing Challenge. I'm so glad to be back. What a season we had last time out. Chris Boland topping the charts in the GT4 machinery. It was very much, I was going to say it was very much his show, but that's probably a little bit unfair to say because he had a lot of challenges from Adam Barron last time around. See what this season has to hold. My name is Chris Buxton. I'll be one of your commentators again, joining you for this season, and I am so thrilled to be back. I am equally as thrilled to have alongside me once again the one and only the Scottish wonder himself, John Munro. Glad to have you back at my side, sir.
It's good to be back, isn't it? This series was so exciting last season. It was my first taste of the action, and I thoroughly enjoyed myself. And I'm sure, based on what I saw, that the drivers enjoyed themselves as well. Such a good scrap all season. Barron versus Boland, and it was Boland who came out on top. But this season's looking a little bit different. We don't seem to have McFadden for the first round here, and he was actually the pace setter early on last season. We'll see if he appears later on in the championship. But we do instead have the return of a former champion, because of course we have Ryan Martin back in, our season 3 champion, looking to reclaim his crown, and he will be right near the top of the timesheets. We also have a couple of new names towards the top, which we'll see very shortly, and of course the return of Barron and Boland to Pete Plasto as well. Ended last season very strongly, took 3 wins in a row, didn't he? And he'll be looking strong too for a championship hunt this time around. So I just think it's going to be, it's definitely not looking like it's calmed down at all from last season. If anything, the competition's just going to have ramped up.
So looking forward to this. It ended on a high last time. The season, as you say, John, was fabulous. And let us see where the season is going to take us. We start off at one of my local tracks, Thruxton. I love this place. I've been here several times. Such a high-speed circuit, and what a brilliant place to kick the season off. And then next time out, we head to the home of British Motorsport. It is Silverstone GP, the full version of Silverstone. That's going to be very interesting to see. Very twisty circuit, difficult to get the right balance, especially if the weather has anything to say. Alton Park, then on the 26th, with one of my favourite circuits in the entire country, Snetterton. We head to Norfolk on the 5th of March with a random choice being picked for round number 5. That gets announced during the broadcast of round 4. Then we head to Belgium for Spa, and then bounce back over to Scotland for Knockhill. So what a diverse choice. You know, Spa, big, open, flowing circuit. Knockhill, tight, twisty, so challenging. What a brilliant choice. Love it. We head over to Spain for Navarra. That's going to be interesting. A second I'm less familiar with, so I'm really looking forward to that. Back on British soil to see the season now with Donington Park and Brands Hatch GP. What a lineup.
It's incredible, and I'm so excited to start the season here at Thruxton, although our camera crew were out yesterday taking these panning shots, and I would say it looks like there's been a bit of a weather change since then. As you can see on the weather chart on the top right hand side there, 90% chance of rain, 19 degrees and cloudy, so typical Thruxton weather at this time of year. And I mean, Thruxton's always been an exciting circuit, but I am so grateful it's come to iRacing, because we get to see it in a virtual setting so much more often now that iRacing of course has this track on its service as of the end of last year. So I've not actually yet watched a proper race around here on iRacing. I have seen plenty, however, races around Thruxton in various other sims, and of course in real life as well, especially the British Touring Car Championship. And Chris, for those watching that aren't from the UK, I mean, just talk about how amazing this circuit is.
Thruxton is a wonderful, wonderful place. I have had the amazing pleasure of being able to commentate from this particular circuit several times in my commentary career. The second commentary position is basically at the top of that particular track map, Campbell Cobb and Seagrave. That chicane complex at the top of the map. That is really interesting. You see the cars come screaming towards you from Allard, which is the first turn. You kind of see them just coming out of Allard and then towards you through Campbell Cobb and Seagrave. You leave your sight as they come into Goodwood, which is the long sweeping right-hander, top right-hand corner. And the main commentary position is the start-finish straight. It being an actual active airfield, a very small one, you commentate from the actual air control tower on the start finish line. So that in itself is very, very exciting. This track is all about conservation of momentum. It is so much right foot that it is so exciting to see. But if the weather is as bad as we saw it in practice, which, as you were saying, John, looks like it's going to be, this is going to be a real test because, again, wet weather, they always say, is a bit of a leveler. But because this circuit is so fast, you're coming into Club, which is the final chicane complex, and you're hoping you find enough grip to slow you down again. So that's going to be quite interesting. I've seen numerous cars skit off there in the dry. So this could be very, very exciting. So for those unfamiliar with the setup, it's 2 races for tonight. So the qualifying is underway now to set the grid for race number 1. It is a heart reverse grid for race number 2, and we had some interesting moments with the randomizer of that, didn't we, John?
Yes, we did. I think, was it the first 3 or 4 races in a row we had, I think it was 12th place
12.
was put on pole every single time. We promised it wasn't a fix, although that did create some very exciting racing, it has to be said. But we've been told by our producer Tom that the wheel has been tested several times and has thrown up different numbers, so that's some exciting news for you there. It will still be 12, of course it will. Inevitably it's going to be 12.
So what would your chariot of choice be for this series, John?
I don't know is the honest answer. I mean, we saw such a wide range of cars doing well last season. I always like the Porsche. I think I like the way it handles. I like the way it, the turn in and the traction you get out of the corners being crucial. I think for overtaking in these cars, as you say, this track is about momentum, but GT4s in general, it's really, really important to try and keep that momentum up and get good exits from the corners. And I think the Porsche is very, very good at that. So I'd be considering that. I'm also really intrigued to see how the new facelift version of the BMW gets on this season. Looks like we've only got one taker though, and it's actually our reigning champion, number 1, Chris Boland, who will be in the new BMW. So fascinated to see how he gets on. But as usual, I mean, the Mercedes is always a popular pick. That's kind of a safe bet, I would say. Definitely comfortable driving that over the big British curbs. You've also got the Aston Martin, of course, another popular choice as well. And the McLaren is probably the other one, Chris. Slightly different to the others, a little bit more twitchy potentially, different characteristics. But it's proving popular. I think it's more popular this year than it was last year, and we saw what Stu McFadden could do with it at the start of last year. So
yeah,
basically, my answer is who knows.
I'll take all of them. Yeah, I was a bit surprised to see Chris Boland actually change his allegiance from the Aston that had served him so brilliantly well, and the sole BMW pilot, at least for this particular race. And oh my God, is it inclement out there? Now, I can say I am in somewhat of a unique position that I have at one of my times commentating at Thruxton, I had weather like this. I was soaked. Absolutely drenched. Thankfully, I was able to kind of change clothes in the commentary box, but the level of spray you see off the back of the cars, I say it's probably about right. And we have got, there's 17 cars out there at the moment. When they're all bunched up, God help you if you're in the mid-pack, because you are driving on pure instinct and hopes and prayers by that stage. It's going to be very, very exciting. There is about 21 cars out there at the moment. So as a reminder, this is qualifying. So we've had the practice session, which Pete Plasto, and again, apologies, Pete, I got your name wrong every single race last year. I kept calling you Peter Plastow. It's Peter Plasto. Actually topped the timesheet in the Aston Martin, the 312 Aston Martin, in the practice session, which was round about this kind of damp. But as we can see, Ryan Martin, our returning Season 3 champion in the Mercedes, has got that top spot at the moment, 122.348. Bit of a gap between the competitors at the moment. Chris Pawley, the second Mercedes, number 88, also with our RAF, he sits in second with our defending champion, Chris Boland. We're riding on board with now in the Sol BMW, currently in third. Now, Chris Boland, whether he was late to practice, not entirely certain, but he sat around 6th position. So is there more pace to find, or is the wet weather really dampening his spirit? I'm sorry, I've got it off my system now. It's done. I won't say that one again.
Glad you got it out of the way with 13 minutes to go in qualifying. Well, I'm sure there'll be another one later on. Yeah, like the gaps are big at the moment, but I always think in these conditions, especially on likes of iRacing, it's very realistic. The gaps are always going to be a bit bigger in the wet, especially when drivers are finding their feet. And that's not to say that the skill gap is bigger or anything like that. It's just that little differences and mistakes and reference points, everything you do makes a bigger difference. So if you get one corner slightly wrong in the wet, you're going to lose more time relative to the dry. And obviously everyone's working out the lines as they go, so you will just find generally a bigger variation. You see it the same in Formula 1, for example, in a qualifying session. In the dry, everyone's split by maybe 2 or 3 tenths of a second, whereas in the wet, it might be 1.5 seconds or something like that. So we're seeing that so far, but it's definitely a strong start for Ryan Martin in the 86, who you're looking at now, as Chris said, our Season 3 champion, returning. And, the caliber of drivers we have in this series, this is a very, very strong field. I mean, Ryan's iRacing, for example, is over 5,000, so this is a fast driver, and the competition is very stiff as well. But we didn't see Ryan last year. A lot of other drivers got a chance to get up to speed with the GT4s, get used to it. We saw the improvements through the years, especially from the likes of Pete Plasto, who we mentioned earlier, finding pace all the way through. So it'll be interesting to see how these guys can take it to Ryan Martin, and whether they can actually take it to Ryan, who's just gone a little bit quicker again, 122.239. But, he wasn't fastest in practice. He's come to the top now. Either he was sandbagging a little bit or just saving himself, or maybe everyone's just getting up to speed, and we should see a little bit more. The names I'm fascinated to see here, Chris, are Chris Pauly and David Wrench, as Ryan Martin goes for a little bit of a spin as I look at my timing sheet. But yeah, Pauly and Wrench, second and third. That's the first time I've seen these two names in this series. They're not from last season. They're new to the series, unless they drove in the seasons before that I missed, so apologies if that's the case. But 2 unfamiliar names in the top 3 at the start, ahead of reigning champion Boland, ahead of Bradley Kropp, who's doing a good job in 5th, and ahead of Adam Barron in 6th as well. So we've got some new names in amongst the action right at the top of the standings.
Yeah, I'm right there with you, John. I'm very curious, particularly with David Wrench. Now, you were mentioning the caliber of the drivers, Ryan Martin with a 5,000 I rating. Conversely, David Wrench is under 1,000. Now, there could be a variety of reasons for that. I'm not passing judgment on. I know I couldn't drive like this. Absolutely not. It is safer for all concerned if I am in the commentary box. Trust me. So,
trust him on that one.
Yeah, he has witnessed it. So, yeah, it's not passing judgment. Not saying that he's a slow driver. Evidently not. He's currently in 3rd. Less than a second off the back of Ryan Martin, chasing him down the road at the moment. Still seeing constant improvements consistent, I should say, improvements from a number of our drivers. Like I say, so a mixture of new and old names for particularly last season. We now look at Tom Stevens in the 189 Porsche. Currently sits in 11th, 1.8 seconds off the top time. Adam Barron has just jumped up to 4th in I think he's still the lead Porsche. So Barron and Boland are reunited again, but not where we quite expected them to be, whether that is down to the weather or whether it's the track or whatever it is. Not quite in the top 2 spots that we regularly saw them in. But it is good to see them back nonetheless. There's Jack Ajewski. We definitely enjoyed his company last season. Had some unusual moments, did Jack. Trying to remind myself what it was he drove. I have to look at last year's results to remind myself. It was the Merc he was in, which he has reunited himself with this time. So good to see Jack back. Right behind him, Mark Gladwell. That's a name that I don't recognize from last season, so welcoming on board the number 80 Mercedes. The Merc does seem to be the most populous choice in amongst our competitors. That's a fantastic livery that Jack is currently chasing. I know we talked about the liveries quite a bit last year. The James Stroke John Finch green Aston Martin I thoroughly enjoyed. Glad to see that livery is back. Oh, Adam Barron is getting in amongst the Mercs up top. That is 3rd position now for the number 5 Porsche. So just 7 tenths off the top time.
Normally Thruxton all about the slipstream as well, and whether or not you can pull together a good lap with the help of a friend. In the wet, of course, not quite as important. As you were saying, the visibility is low, it's very tricky to see. You will still get an advantage in terms of speed on the straight with that slipstream. And I say straight, I don't really mean straight. When we're talking about Thruxton, there isn't there isn't much straight tarmac out there, because I mean you're pretty much flat out from Goodwood to Church. Church is a little bit of a lift, and the wet it's probably a bit of a break, and then you're flat through Brooklands as well. But all of these straights are actually slightly curved, so it's a bit of a strange one. But when I talk about straights, just know that I'm talking about the flat out bits, like the slipstream really does help through there, but it's gonna cost you in terms of visibility in the wet for sure. I don't know if that's going to make much of a difference in this particular qualifying session, but it usually helps the racing stay very close and exciting at Thruxton. It's one of the reasons that we all love watching races at Thruxton. The car you just saw drive through the screen, by the way, that blue BMW just ahead, that is your reigning champion, Chris Boland, the only BMW in the field in a stunning blue livery. But he's about to cross the line as well, as will Jack Trunwitt, who we're watching now in the Mercedes. Boland stays 5th on 123.7, and Trunwitt stays 8th on a 144.8 on that particular lap. So that wasn't a good one from Jack, but he'll be lining up for another one. Just as well, looking at some of our race winners from last season. So Tom Stevens did win a race last season. I believe he won Brands Hatch just before the end of the season, so he'll be looking to continue that sort of form. Other race winners in the field, we've got Benjamin Cullen as well in P8. He won a race at Knockhill. Pete Plasto, of course, who's now up in 3rd position in qualifying. He won 3 races in a row last season. Slight change to the livery there for Pete going into this year in the now kind of British Racing Green Aston Martin. And obviously Barron and Boland, they won multiple races each as well on their fight for the title. Also, we had James King doing very, very well last year. He's switched from the BMW to the McLaren, now sitting in P14. James is one of the fantastic organisers of this championship, this series, this community, and it's great to see him back out again in the RAF eMotorsports McLaren. Now, James doesn't use a steering wheel when he's racing in this particular series. He's a very, very quick sim racer, but he's actually racing on, I think it's a controller.
It was either a controller or a keyboard, or I think he switched it in the course of the season, which I was absolutely stunned, because considering that he's really consistent, he was regularly well inside the top 10
in
the
BMW
in
the championship.
He was 5th overall
as well. Yeah. So very, very quick.
With that livery as well, I recognise that livery from the BMW he ran last season. So glad to see that's been recycled. Where we've just seen James do a bit of grass cutting, that's the exit of Church coming into Brooklands. We've seen quite a few people go off there. He's like you say, John, you would usually take Church with a little bit of a lift. I think drivers are being caught out by probably the varying grip levels that is afforded to the drivers at the moment. But turning left into a right-hander is usually never a good idea, but in these conditions you can expect it. Riding on board then with the king of the BMWs from last year as we come into Campbell Cobb and Seagrave, the complex as he is otherwise known. Over the curb coming through Cobb, and then just get the car nicely balanced. Oh, too much though. Push the entry speed a little bit too much, which made him wander slightly too far, and that is that lap ruin. You would normally be fairly flat out through Noble, which is this left-hander, and then into Goodwood. Almost Bradley Crott, we also saw last season. He's keeping out of people's way. He's had a big incident just after the pit lane entry. I suspect he's keeping out of people's way. There's one of our newcomers, Chris Pawley, in front row Mercedes, joining Brian Martin. So again, not entirely sure what to expect from Chris Pawley, but it is a great way to make a statement of intent, starting on the front row alongside a former champion.
Also seen Darren Barris has popped up as well, so hopefully Darren's taking part, another race winner from last season. He's not in the standings there, but he is in the server, so let's hope that he will get involved before the end of this qualifying session. Just 4 minutes to go now, so the drivers will be looking to get in those final few laps. But the lap times at this point, I would say, Chris, you're seeing the lap times you're seeing are representative of the times, because now they've had 16 minutes to get up to speed. There's no more excuses of, I haven't had a clean lap yet. And I mean, there's a good chance some of these drivers won't have had a clean lap yet, but it can't be blamed purely on the lack of time that there's been now. 16 minutes in, we can begin to really get a feel for who's where, and it does look like Martin has the advantage, which perhaps isn't a surprise, really. He's probably the bookie's favourite for the championship coming back into it this season, assuming he does all of the rounds. But it's good to see a few drivers holding him close, and obviously, GT4 racing, anything can happen, especially with the slipstream effect around Thruxton. I'm really, really intrigued to see how the wet weather does affect things, though. I'm fascinated to see. One thing that's happening this year is a rolling start as well, because of some of the cars having a few, let's say, clutch issues, making it a little bit unfair to get them off the line with the default setup. So the series was, of course, fixed setups as well, meaning the drivers can't really change too much about the way the car handles. You've got to drive it as it comes, essentially, which keeps things nice and close, keeps things nice and exciting. and stops someone running away with huge setup knowledge advantages. So it's all about promoting close, exciting racing, and I can guarantee you that is what we're going to see tonight.
I absolutely agree there, John. As we are looking at Scott Eastwood in the McLaren, he was formerly in the Porsche last season. Didn't see him for every round, but he's uniting himself with the McLaren for this season. As we ride on board with the number 42 coming down towards the final club chicane. Slowest part of the circuit. Just got to keep the curbs fairly well ridden to keep the car as stable as you can. Again, you're on the right foot for so much of the lap. Not an improvement for Scott on that occasion. He's got another couple of laps still on the clock. Adam Barron, a name we are very, very familiar with from last season, reunites with his Porsche and put absolutely nailed to the floor, but that's how quickly it can go horribly wrong. And with the very slippery nature of this circuit in the wet, sounds like a bit of an obvious statement, but because this circuit is so quick, when it goes wrong in the wet, it can go horribly wrong. Oops, as was demonstrated by Mr. Pauly in the black Mercedes that was doing a spin, as Bradley Kropp has chosen an interesting spectator vantage point from the inside of the club chicane.
Everyone's off left, right, and centre, but that is the thing with Thruxton, isn't it? I mean, even in the dry, it's an intense lap. There's so many areas, like Church. We just saw the right-hander where Barron ran onto the grass. That's such a tricky corner to get right in the dry. It's such a commitment-based corner. So in the wet, I can't imagine how tricky it must be to judge the speed heading into there and obviously just control that car oversteering. We're going to see drivers running wide. We're going to see drivers spinning off there in the race, I can assure you. But yeah, it's going to be fascinating to see how the rest of the lap goes in these kind of conditions, and as I say, how people actually follow, whether they go aggressive or try and just survive in the wet. This is, of course, the first wet race we've ever seen in this series. You see, I think that's James King spinning off to the left-hand side. Sorry to laugh, James. But yeah, I think, you know, it's the first wet race some of these drivers will have had in this series, or actually any drivers had in this particular series, but some of them will have been doing more wet racing than others on iRacing in general. So I do think we're going to see a little bit of a split in the field here. We're going to see some drivers rise to the top with wet weather experience over the last year since it's been introduced to the service. And we'll see other drivers who are maybe less familiar with the wet, either having to get up to speed quickly or struggling with it perhaps. So that's going to be fascinating too. We won't know, of course, what the swings are going to be until we see a dry race too. But Chris Boland, for one, I would expect. I mean, he's P6 right now, but he's less than 2/10 off of P3, so it's super, super close from P3 all the way down to P6. It doesn't look like this is going to be the lap for Boland either, though he's backed off.
No, indeed. He'd given this lap up, I think, a few corners ago. So, and that's another thing to bear in mind is whilst we're seeing, you know, Ryan Martin, Chris Pauly in the Mercedes at the top of the tree at the moment, now that will be given partly the Mercedes potential top speed advantage. Oops, that's a late call into the pit. But yeah, that doesn't necessarily mean that we are going to see always the Mercs doing well. That's an unusual way of exiting the circuit, but that again, you know, you touch the grass slightly too much on the left-hand side coming through Church, and you will be catapulted into the middle of the circuit where you'll probably find a runway in there. So. The rate that they were going, but you know, we have got some really tight and twisty circuits. Knock Hill, prime example. So we won't necessarily see the same running order throughout the season. But qualifying is now done, and Jack Ajewski then just finishing his lap in the Mercedes. Doesn't look like he's going to improve. So it is Ryan Martin and Chris Pauly, the 86 and 88 Mercedes, that lock out the front row. On row 2 is Pete Plasto and David Rentz. So 2 newcomers inside the top 4. Superb. And that is really going to be interesting to see how they make the established names work for their money. Adam Barron and Chris Boland, the dueling bees return. There's Barron ahead of Boland on row 3. Bradley Kropp and Ben Cullen occupy row 4 with Jack Trunwitt and Dan Cross on row 5. Row 6 is Tom Stevens and John Finch, with Jackie Ajewski and James King taking on row 7, Scott Eastwood and Mark Gladwell on row 8, Stephen Wardle and Ben Weston on row 9, Sean Watson, the last car to qualify with a time, he is joined with Darren Barris on row 10, And Craig Lidieu and Adrian Warmington, again, two more new names to the series. Hopefully they do start. They did join the session. Hopefully they will start us at the back of the field.
Yeah, we didn't see everyone in the server out on track during qualifying, so it'd be interesting to see how many cars we have starting the race. And just a reminder, as Chris said at the start of the broadcast, 2 15-minute races today. So the first race will, of course, use the qualifying grid order, and then there will be a reverse draw done after that first race between 6th and 12th. One of those positions is going to be reversed. So basically, your target is, if you're kind of starting around about 10th to 15th, you just want to make sure that you're guaranteed inside that top 12 to give yourself a chance at that reverse grid. But obviously, to be guaranteed of a reverse grid slot, you're going to have to finish in the top 6. So that's something to look out for during the race, as well as, of course, our lead battles. Will we see the track dry out? It doesn't look like it. I mean, it looks like it now. Again, these shots not taken during this session. I think it will still be very, very wet for the race, and it'll be interesting to see how the drivers approach lap 1 as well. Visibility is going to be key. Obviously, the drivers right at the front will have the best of the visibility, and then it's going to be chaos behind that. So very intrigued to see how they get through the first section of track. Allard's a fast corner to start the season off with, and then obviously the big braking down towards Campbell and Cobb. We've seen many incidents there in the past on opening laps of GT and touring car races. I'm pretty confident we may see more today.
Yes, I fully endorse that statement. I think one of my everlasting memories of Thruxton from a real life standpoint was a BMW that had lost its driver's side door on lap 1, but because both the commentary positions are on the outside of the track, neither me nor the lead commentator realized he was missing a door until it came into the pits. The pit lane reporter said, this BMW's done some weight shedding. But such is the kind of real cutthroat nature of Thruxton, because it's so fast. You don't have an awful lot of braking zones. Okay, slightly different in the wet, but yeah, it's one of these things you've got to push every advantage you can, and that's what I'm expecting our drivers to do, even if it is in the wet. It does look like Adrian Warmington and Craig Lidieu have not joined the session, unfortunately. So the Mercedes and the McLaren that were due to start on row 11 potentially will not be taking the start of this race, the first of our 2 races for tonight. The drivers just conducting their warm-up lap at the moment. Everyone else, so we have 20 cars ready to do battle to see this season opener here in Thruxton.
It's time for the drivers to prepare and get ready for this one, and it's going to be frenetic. 15 minutes is not much time, as we learned very quickly last season, Chris, because the race would start, and then within what felt like about 2 minutes, we were on the final lap and everything was kicking off. It was incredibly exciting, incredibly frenetic, and very short-lived, but that's why you've got to enjoy it, and that's the joy, I guess, of sprint racing. You've got to make it count from the start. You've got to get up through the order as early as possible, and then stick onto it for dear life, essentially. You've got to hold on to it as much as you can, and we're expecting lots of battles throughout the whole field. It's a strong field. We've got great strength and depth, and also what I would say as well, Chris, I know I joke about the fact that there will be incidents, and of course there will be, it's tricky. We also have to say the driving standards last season were fantastic across the board, really, really strong. We saw some great racing, we saw minimal incidents, of course we still saw some incidents, but generally speaking the driving was brilliant and respectful and exciting, so hopefully we see more of the same from these drivers this year.
Absolutely. So, and all of our drivers were highly commendable for the general standard that was maintained throughout the season. Switch over to the live picture then, the pace car leading them through Brooklands. Nerves are no doubt jangling in our drivers. All the senses are on high alert. You've got everybody in very close succession. The spray is minimal, of course, at the moment. All know this process by now. Most of these drivers have raced against each other many times, so they know what to expect. Ryan Martin and Chris Pauley, the Mercedes duo, leads them through the club chicane. The pace car pulls away. Lights about to come on to signify the beginning of the race. And Ryan Martin's already gone. He's nailed it brilliantly well. And we are racing. The season is open here at Thruxton. So you had Pete Plasto having a look on the inside line, did not commit to the move, remains in third. So we look further down the field. There's Chris Boland, the sole BMW, our champion from last season. He is under pressure from Ben Cullen behind. In the Mercedes, trying to get the outside line, coming into Campbell, can't get it done. Oh, that's very close from the Mercedes. Doesn't commit to the move, but everybody just past me because it's wet, taking a little bit more caution. just trying to keep all the wheels pointing in the same direction. Judging by the gaps, though, it's so far so good.
It wasn't the usual chaos into Campbell and Cobb that we've come to expect, really, with that. And I think it was to do with the rain and also just to do with the drivers being well behaved. This is where it's going to get tricky, though. Interesting to see the different line variation. Will we see drivers taking a wide line through Goodwood? At the moment, everyone seems fairly status quo. Everyone's quite relaxed. And Chris Boland just joining the queue as well. It looks like it's one train all the way through the field as Boland now heads through Church for the first time. Will anyone run onto the grass? No, everyone once again playing it nice and safe, keeping neat and tidy. Martin leads though, and it's 7/10 to Pauly, which is, to be honest, I thought the gap might be bigger than that on this opening lap, so Pauly's kept him honest, especially after such a strong launch from Martin. But will we see any moves into the chicane? We will see Plasto losing the back end, and he's gone. So that's Pete Plasto from 3rd place, dropping through the order, and his first race is already going to turn into a recovery drive. Can he get back inside the reverse grid spots though? And we also have a spin for Finch in the background too.
Oh, the bright green Aston has failed him, and he's facing the wrong way. We knew full well it was him immediately with that bright green colour scheme. But alas, the 886 dropping down through the field. So that puts Adam Barron up into 4th position now. He's got David Rent directly ahead. He's trying to wrong foot the Porsche to get the momentum he needs. Now going to be forced to the outside line for Seagrave. That's not going to help him. Now tries to cut back inside, but he's lost too much momentum. Here comes Chris Boland in the Mercedes. Can he challenge the BMW? 2 German marks crossing swords now, coming through Seagrave towards Noble. But no, the BMW just manages to fend off Ben Cullen behind. But yeah, I see what you mean by the different lines. A few drivers just getting out of the spray to help their visibility. It's going to put them on the marbles though, so you have got to be careful by doing that. So Boland is under pressure again from Cullen. Bradley Kropp is in there ready to join this party. So in this particular group we're looking at is Barron, Boland, Cullen and Kropp.
With the wet surface though, you will find grip levels vary, so you might find some drivers searching for a bit more grip on the outside where normally they would be losing it, so it'll be interesting to keep an eye on that. But of course there's also the drying racing line, which you'll see is a darker colour. Down the inside goes the Aston, lucky to avoid Benjamin Cullen there in the Merc. Slots back in behind, that was Bradley Kropp in the 27, getting a little bit wrong into the chicane, but very well done to avoid any contact there. Well done to all the drivers. Martin, meanwhile, fastest lap of the race at this early stage, now increased that gap up to 1 second from Pauly, and we've got a spinner at the back. That's Ben Weston in the 66 Porsche who's gone around. So it seems like the chicane is causing issues for our drivers this season. That's a bad rejoin from Weston. I think he thought he was clear, he didn't realise, and then through came Ajewski at the back, and yeah, unfortunate incident there. Looks like just I don't think he realised there were more cars coming through.
No, that was a big shame for Jack Ajewski. There was no way he could have gone to avoid that impact. We now look at Jack Trunwick, that is under pressure from Dan Cross. Again, another pair of our Mercedes. I love that red black colour scheme from Cross. So again, he's tried to go a little bit deep coming through. Can't even identify where they are. So much speed. I think that's Church they've just gone through.
I think it was Goodwood.
Oh, beg your pardon. Yes, so it's go through now Village, now down towards Church. But you can just see the tail just gets really, really lively. That tiny mistake, that tiny loss of momentum, that's all Dan Cross needed. That's going to be 8th to the red and black Mercedes. Jack Trunwick's not giving up on it, but he's going to have no choice. The door gets closed. It's 8th position to Dan Cross. What
a difference it made there, as you say. Trunwick just losing the back end slightly, getting offline, but the momentum swing was huge. There's absolutely no chance he had of defending that position from Dan Cross. And that just shows you that every little mistake counts. We did see in the background, though, Pete Plasto coming back through. He's now up to P11.
John Finch in the bright green Aston. Oops, is that Wardle, or was that a back marker that was going? Oh no, it's Mark Gladwell that has gone for a bit of a spin. So he had a newcomer to the series. Oh, Cullen! That's Ben Cullen that is sideways blocking the track between Campbell and Cobb. I mean, that it's a much slower part of the circuit, and because it's fairly flat, the drivers will see that there is a car stranded there. But even still, there's a very nervous moment when you are sideways blocking the race circuit.
It's not great, is it? But Benjamin Cullen did a good job there to keep his foot on the brake and not roll forward or backwards, and it let every driver see what was going on, and they could take a decision to avoid. So good stuff there, but unfortunate to have the spin in the first place. We're seeing a lot of those kind of low speed spins at the moment, which we obviously do see in the dry sometimes in these GT4 cars. They are quite powerful. But as Barron has a big moment, and through's going to go Boland. The Inseparables are inseparable again. And Boland moves up into 4th ahead of Barron, who will just be grateful at this point to still be facing the right direction, because as I was saying, we've been seeing a lot of cars rotating, and we've seen a lot of spins so far, and that's just the wet weather. Yes, the GT4s are sometimes a bit tricky in the dry as well, but as soon as you add that low grip condition into the mix, it just becomes lethal, and we've seen lots of very good drivers getting caught out. We almost saw Barron having a big one there, but thankfully he's hung on and will live to fight another day in P5.
Big Plasto now back up into 10th position, as you were saying. Oh, what's happened to Ryan Martin? Ryan
He's
Martin,
gone.
a race leader, facing the wrong way. That's Camelcom, and Seagrave again has claimed another victim. A race leader. He was over 2 seconds in the lead, and even former champions that can make those tiny mistakes. That drops him down to 3rd. Chris Pawley, newcomer to the season, now leads the way. Oh, and that's another one as well. That's Jack Trunwitt on the exit of Seagrave. So, well, we did say there was going to be plenty of spins, and we are not being disappointed there as Plasto now up into Plasto. Sorry, Pete. Now up into 9th position. That actually puts King back inside the top 10. He's already had a spin in the McLaren. So James King, he was really known as being the lead of the BMWs, now leads the British brand of McLaren.
It's low-speed traction-related spins at the moment, and it's, as we were saying, it's catching out everyone, including our race leader, our previous race leader, Ryan Martin, who's now down to 3rd. But it's just very, very easy in these wet conditions to lose the rear, because you're obviously dancing with the throttle pedal, trying to get out of the corner as quickly as you can, and you're so used to just applying that little bit more power, it's very, very easy to get caught out, and that's exactly what we're seeing. So it's really a demonstration of how tricky these conditions are. We've just seen Darren Barris drop through a few positions as well. He tries to make his way up through the field from the back of the grid, but is now down in 16th after that. So yeah, it's drama throughout. It just shows you, though, that this race isn't over, as Darren Barris rejoins the track there, you can see, in 17th. Following his misdemeanor. And right now, Chris, we've got Pauly and Wrench, 2 newcomers to the series, leading this race, but only 3.3 seconds ahead of Martin. So, I mean, this race is, everything's to play for right now, isn't it? As Pete Plasto gets really close to the back of Tom Stevens.
Yeah, that was so close. I thought that was going to be a spinning Porsche for sure, but well driven from both of them to avoid that. Yeah, 2 newcomers leading a former champion. Yes, you can attribute the weather as a fairly decent factor in that. It's caught everybody out, true enough, but fairness, they were still inside the top 5 come qualifying anyway. So yeah, keep an eye on Chris Pawley and David Wrench as the season continues. So I think we could be in for some fantastic racing from the new blood entering this particular series. But now we are continuing to enjoy Peter Plasto on the back of Tom Stevens. These 2 have crossed swords before. Porsche versus Aston Martin, with James King, I would say a ringside seat, but all you can see is just grey water being flung into his face. Oh, he's deep. It's King. Can he slow that one down? He did manage to slow it down, but that's going to cost him momentum. He just hit the brakes slightly too late, and you're never going to recover that, especially not in the wet. That's another fastest lap from, oh no, it was Boland that's actually just taken the fastest lap. I thought it was another fastest lap from Ryan Martin. It's actually Chris Boland, the number 1 BMW, has just secured it, not by much, only by half a tenth, but he's keeping the pressure on Ryan Martin.
The lap times are incredibly close for the top 7 here in this race. I mean, looking at the best laps, 23.2, 23.5, 23.1, 23.1, 23.2. It's incredibly close, as we expected, of course, but that's just brilliant to see. And Boland now with it, of course, on that previous lap, the 23.112. Yeah, I think James King was just desperate to get some visibility there on the braking zone, Chris.
Yeah.
He'll do anything to get out of the train of spray. But in all seriousness, he was very lucky not to lose more time there, because as soon as you touch the grass, you're gone. Essentially, you're going to run so wide through that chicane. So he did well to recover it. You can see the gaps are opening out a little bit. It's not like a traditional Thruxton race we've come to expect in terms of the cars, being nose to bumper throughout the field. I mean, it's not touring cars, it's GT4 racing, but I think the biggest thing towards that is the wet weather. You could just see above, in front of King there, Plasto and Stevens side by side, so now we are getting some side-by-side racing in the midfield. It's Plasto on the outside, Stevens defending the inside line. Let's see if Plasto can get the run, but he cannot. He's too wide on the entry, can't quite bring it back in, and Stevens does a good job defending, and those positions stay the same. Meanwhile, Cullen fighting with Trunwitt for P11 in the background as well through the chicane. You can see them close together, and it's Trunwitt at the moment ahead of Benjamin Cullen, the recovering Benjamin Cullen, of course, after his spin earlier on. And looking at those gaps and position changes, we've got Plasto dropping back the most, 6 places down after his early spin. To be fair, that's a great recovery drive actually from Pete to get back up to P9 at this early stage. Benjamin Cullen down 4 places after his spin, so really the biggest movers are those who've spun throughout. But it's Paulie and Wrench still at the front, and they've kind of stabilised those gaps a little bit. In fact, Wrench has pulled away slightly from Martin, and I mean, it's looking good for the two of them.
Absolutely so, and Ryan Martin has pulled away from Chris Boland. The fastest lap has actually changed hands again to Chris Paulie, our race leader. So the visibility certainly doing him a world of good. The podium spots all occupied by Mercedes drivers at this point in time. Is the track getting drier? Is the grip level starting to come a bit more towards the drivers? We will see. I mean, we're not seeing the fastest lap bouncing around between every single person, so I don't think the track is drying at a huge rate of us, although that is a big improvement there. Chris Paulie now into, well, 22.8. That's now 22.2, the fastest lap in the hands of Ryan Martin. So my previous statement of it not bouncing around between drivers has just been proven wrong as soon as I say it. Excellent stuff. We commentators, we have that gift. But,
that was impeccable timing, Chris, I have to say. Impeccable.
Yeah, Ryan Martin now built up a 2-second gap between himself and Chris Boland as we look at Pete Plasto on the outside line of Tom Stevens. The Porsche's lost a little bit of momentum, trying not to slide into the side of the Aston coming through Campbell, but that position is going to belong to the Aston Martin. Pete Plasto up into 8th, but a little bit recalcitrant coming out of Seagrave, puts the Porsche alongside once again. Thruxton is wide enough to go side by side, but in the wet conditions, it's a very, very brave pair of drivers to do it. But in the end, the rhythm just went back to the Aston at the right time, and already a second between the two as we now look at Cullen and Trenwick. The battle for 11th continues between these two Mercedes. Are they closing in on James King ahead of them? Potentially they are, but the battle of the Mercs continues to their spot inside the top 10.
Bit of an elongated Swedish shuffle there from Plasto to Campbell and Cobb. Got it done and has quickly gapped Stevens, who was just offline, as you were saying. It looks like this is the closest battle on the track at the moment. Trunwitt versus Cullen. Cullen looking very racy. It looks like he's got the pace advantage over Trunwitt to Mercedes. Now he's going to go for the cutback here. Beautiful stuff. Losing a little bit of rear traction, but I tell you what, Trunwitt's actually been okay there. I think when Cullen's tried to cut back to the inside, he's got on the damp section and he's just lost a little bit of rear traction. So I guess Trunwitt lives to fight another day, but you can see just how unstable that Mercedes is. These guys are hanging on for dear life. Will Cullen go for a move down the inside in towards Campbell? No, he won't. He's going to try and force Trunwitt into a mistake, and he's going to have a better line here, but it's just, you know, we can't see as commentators here where the grip actually lies. So sometimes it looks like a situation's going to unfold a certain way, but you actually don't realize that one of the drivers has way more grip than it appears, and that's the constant challenge, isn't it? You're in the wet, you're just trying to fumble around for grip, find out where the grip is, remember where it is for the next time around, but then of course the conditions change lap in, lap out, so it's a constant exploration going on for these drivers at the moment, and you can just see all of that searching happening right before our eyes. Wrench, by the way, has closed the gap on Paulie. It's now down to 1 second between the lead two, now under a second, so this could get exciting with 1 or 2 laps to go.
Yeah, David Wrench gained half a second on Chris Paulie last time around. So, yeah, there you go. You can see the last lap times on the tower, about 6/10 indeed, between the lead Mercedes. Ryan Martin is still gaining on them. Actually, no, he lost time on David Wrench last time around, did our previous champion. So, Ryan may not be too involved in this battle as the two lead Mercs are now catching one of our back markers. I think that is the 89 of Sean Watson. Big flash of the lights there from Chris Paulie to signify get out of the way, which he dutifully does. But that gap is getting very, very low now between the two lead Mercs. The checkered flag is going to fall. Dan Cross is showing us off track, but he's gotten himself back on the on terra firma, but not before Pete Plasto has taken 7th place from him. But the two lead Mercs are still dancing, and David Wrench gets a little bit uncomfortable going through the right-hander. Oh, that could have gone horribly wrong, but he manages to keep it pointing the right way.
He had to go for it there. Yeah, that was his last chance really to get a run on Paulie, but it's not going to happen. So Paulie's going to come into the final chicane, sticks to the drying racing line, the natural racing line here, wet or dry, and take it nice and easy through the chicane. Tell you what, an amazing exit from Wrench, but it's not enough as Paulie takes the first victory of the 2025 season on his debut as well. Chris Paulie in the 88 take about. Incredible performance.
Absolutely superb. There was a lot of pressure with Tom Stevens. He's having to go down cross in the red and black Mercedes. Oh, there's going to be close, but the Mercedes just manages to shut the door on the Porsche. Is not going to be enough room for Stevens to try and make a move before the checkered flag finds him. So it's cross from Stevens from King, not far behind. Oh, there's Stephen Wardle flirting with the grass. Your car might be aqua coloured, but the water is not going to favour you any more than it does anybody else, sir. So the McLaren still facing the right way. He's going to claim 15th position. But what a way to open the season. That has been a superb race. Few unfortunate misgivings from poor Jakajewski. He really had no way of avoiding that big impact he suffered. Look at that. That's a great bit of formation driving there from our top contingent. That is superb. So hopefully we'll have an opportunity to speak to our podium sitters. It's not mandatory, but it is always nice to be able to speak to our podium sitters before the next race begins. But yeah, that was superb. Well driven. I mean, it looked like it was going to be a runaway victory for Ryan Martin, who did indeed hang on to the fastest lap, 122.270, as the checkered flag fell. But one mistake is all it took.
Exactly that. Just one mistake for Ryan Martin, and he dropped down to third. Although, looking at those timing screens, I don't know if that's going to be a final result, but it looks like we're missing David Wrench from there. Now, I don't know if that's due to a penalty, or I think it's just maybe a glitch on the timing screen.
I think that's a glitch on the timing screen, because we don't actually have any GT3s.
There we go. Oh, that's a good point. But the team, yeah, so there we go. So Chris Paulie takes the win from David Wrench with Ryan Martin third. And as you say, one mistake from Martin was enough. And it's not like Martin was able to claw that time back easily at all. They're very, very closely matched at the front. So he'll settle for third in the end, with Chris Bolan, our reigning champion, and Adam Barron, our vice champion from last season, in fifth, ahead of Bradley Kropp. Pete Plaster with a great recovery into seventh as well, Chris. That means he will have a chance at that reverse grid, a very good chance at getting a reverse grid start. And his pace was great throughout too, so we'll look for him towards the front of the grid next time. Dan Cross and Tom Stevens, along with James King, will round out your top 10, with Scott Eastwood in 11th, John Finch 12th, the final driver with a chance at the reverse grid, and Jack Trunwitt will finish 13th, holding off Benjamin Cullen in the end in the battle of the Mercedes. Then Stephen Wardle, Darren Barris, Mark Gladwell, and Adrian Warmington round off your finishers. Actually, no, that's a lie. Sean Watson got lapped on the last lap there, did a great job getting out of the way, and he finishes 19th.
I will drop Chris Paulie a message. I don't see other podium sitters in the Discord, which is a bit of a shame.
I do see Chris Paulie there in the voice chat, so it just depends it depends if we can get him or not.
Yes, I'll drop him a message. I don't want to just grab him. Let me just see if he is game for you. But I don't see our other podium sitters, which is a bit of a shame. But like I say, it's not mandatory to try and get hold of them. So David Wrench in at the moment doesn't mean they won't appear. Excellent. Chris Paulie is ready to come and have a chat to us. So remember, there he is. Chris Paulie, are you with us?
Hello, how's it going?
And well, we thoroughly enjoyed that. Well, firstly, welcome to the AFVRC. That's it's great to have you on board, and well, what a way to make an entrance.
Yeah, thanks very much. Thanks for having us. I don't think it could have gone any better than that, really. To have second in qualifying, and then obviously I've benefited from Ryan's small mistake, but yeah, to hold it there at the end from David, who was right on my back, but just managed to keep it there for the win.
Oh, awesome stuff. So the Mercedes seems to be the popular choice, or at least certainly for this opening round. What is it about the Merc that swayed your decision?
To be honest, it's the only one I've tried, but it seems to be in these conditions. Yeah, in these conditions, it seems to be handling pretty well, and I'm actually liking these kind of changeable conditions, because I think it's reducing the gap to Ryan a bit, and kind of keeping it nice and close and unpredictable at the front as well, which is good.
Awesome stuff. Awesome stuff. And as mentioned, all participants within the series are members of our armed forces, so we thank you very much for your service. Chris, are you able to give us a little bit on what the 9 to 5 is for you?
Yeah, so I'm based at RF Valley, training to be an instructor on the Texan, which is one of the aircraft we fly. But like I said, like you mentioned, it's fantastic to be able to do something like this in our spare time. I know a few of the guys who are racing tonight race for real as well, so it's a great group that we have who do this.
Awesome stuff. So, well, again, welcome on board. It's great to see you. And by the look of what we've seen, we will thoroughly enjoy your company throughout the season. Any questions, John?
No, I just want to say well done. That was a great first race, and hopefully we'll see you get on. I mean, obviously we don't know the reverse grid quite yet. We're going to find out very soon. But do you have any expectations for the next one or any targets?
I think it's a lot. One thing I noticed in these conditions, when you're trailing someone, it's quite hard actually to do your normal lines. I think when you get in front, that's really where you want to be. So, if I'm starting sixth in the next race, it could be quite tricky to make the places without any incidents. So we'll see how it goes. I think a podium would be nice, but yeah, we'll see what we can get.
Awesome stuff. Well, best of luck and well done on the victory. Thank you very much, Chris Pauly.
There it goes.
Good luck, Chris.
Yes, indeed. Good luck for the reverse grid race. Right then, production, spin the wheel. So then it is anywhere from the top 6, depending on how the wheel doth dictate. Let's see what it's going to give us. Oh, not again.
Going.
Oh, it's gone. It's ticked over. It is going to be the top 6 are reversed. So, I mean, in a way, that's a bit of a relief. We know the wheel is working properly. Yes, so that means it's going to be Bradley Kropp from Adam Barron on the front row, and then Chris Boland and Ryan Martin on row 2, David Wrench and Chris Pauly on row 3. So those are the names that have been reversed. Everybody else will start from the position they finished in. So that will be row 4 will be Pete Plasto and Dan Cross. Row 5 will be Tom Stevens and James King. Row 6 is Scott Eastwood and John Finch. Row 7 is Jack Trunwit and Ben Cullen. Row 8, Stephen Wardle and Dan Berris. Row 9 is Mark Gladwell and Adrian Warmington. Row 10, Sean Watson and Ben Weston. And row 11 will be Jackie Juski. Steve, unfortunately, you didn't start, but Craig Ledew will be starting at the back of the field. Well. As Chris was saying, it is very difficult to see what you're doing when you're following a field of cars. But at least he's only got 5 ahead of him and not 11, as I thought he might be when the wheel was slowing down.
Yeah, a bit of stress. Listen, we love a 12 reverse grid. We all do, because it just means that the fastest cars are further back. We've got more different names at the front. So I do love a 12 coming up. But a 6 is also great for very different reasons. And obviously, as a driver, you're just praying for a good number. It's always an interesting one when you squeeze into the top 12. You're obviously just absolutely reliant on this magical number 12 coming up. But you've only got a 1 in 6 chance. So it's a weird psychology when you're racing, just desperately trying to get into those reverse grid slots. Tell you who will be frustrated, though. Pete Plasto. That amazing recovery drive has to be said, back up to P7, making great moves through the field after the early spin, only to draw the one number that didn't actually help Pete in this situation. So he'll be disappointed by that, but it means he will be right behind the pace of the field in Pauly, Wrench, Martin, Boland and Barron. So Plasto is essentially in the right place, he's with the right people, but he dropped a lot of points there in that first round, so he'll be desperate to try and climb through the field a little bit and pull back some points.
Yeah, absolutely. So now he's fast as that with 1 in 22.414, so just 2/10 shy of the overall fastest lap, and with the exception, timing screen right, of Ryan Martin, who came home in 3rd in the Mercedes. That was the only time that was quicker than his, so he most certainly got leader's pace in that Aston Martin does Pete Plasto. We know how good he is, we know how fast he is, and we know how determined he can race. So, and as was somewhat proven, having that spin in the early part of the race and having then to fight his way from almost the back of the field right the way through to almost getting that reverse grid pole. So I think part of him will still be very pleased by that.
And he's got a bit of experience now of coming through the field as well. He's warmed up with the overtaking and he's got the momentum. So it'll be interesting to see if that actually pays off in the second one. It'll be interesting as well to see how the conditions differ. We saw the lap times kind of stay around the mid 123s throughout the race, and then right towards the end dipped comfortably into the 22s. So the track was drying slightly. Very intrigued to see how those conditions carry over. Will we see basically an exact continuation, or will there be a little bit of variety in there? I'm fascinated because I don't quite know how it works in iRacing. I don't know if the progression will be a kind of continual state or if it's going to have a sudden change. So that's exciting for sure, and it could definitely mix up the racing. Of course, some drivers will be more comfortable in more wet conditions and others vice versa. So let's wait and see on that front.
Can't wait. So whilst the session is set up, whilst our drivers just have a little bit more practice in these conditions at this circuit, we'll take a quick break and we'll be back with you shortly for our reverse grid race of the opening round of the AFVRC season number 5. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the opening round of the Armed Forces Virtual Race Challenge here at a very soggy Thruxton. We've just seen the new blood take the opening wins. And yeah, it was good to hear from our race winner, Chris Pawley. Unfortunately, we didn't get a chance to chat to our other podium citizens. It would have been interesting to hear from Ryan Martin, but following his spin, he probably may have said a few things that we not have been able to broadcast. But because it did look like he had that one kind of sewn up. But as we said, all it takes is one mistake, and all that hard work was done, and he just couldn't quite get back onto the pace or the consistency that got him towards the front and running away with it. But we'll see now that people are a bit more familiar with the wet conditions. We have the top 6 grid positions reversed from race 1, and we do tend to find that the reverse grid races do open up some more unusual happenings, or some more some more action orientated spots. We'll see. But then again, we did expect when we came into Allard, and particularly into the complex in race 1, we thought it would be a bit more hectic than it was. Drivers probably taking it a bit easier because of the conditions.
Yeah, I take full responsibility for that. I sat there and said, there's going to be a spinner, there's going to be an incident into Campbell and Cobb, and everyone was perfectly well.
Well, there were, just not on lap 1.
Yeah, well, that's true. Yeah. Lap 1 was careful. Maybe they should have tried that more often. But this is your grid for the second race now appearing. So Bradley Crop will, of course, be on... Actually, that's not quite right, I don't think, because it's showing David Wrench P2 in the grid.
No, and Pete Blastow starting 7th.
No, so we'll not worry about that right now. We'll see if we can fix that. But I did also want to say, Chris, real quick, that Ryan Martin's actually a bit under the weather, so that's why he couldn't come and speak to us in the commentary box. I do wonder as well if that's an excuse that he's able. Like, I feel like that if I was him, I would be using that for my spin, because if I'm not feeling well, it makes me lose control of my car. So just a bit of advice, Ryan. Just blame it on the illness, which he's not doing, by the way. That's just what I would do.
His secret's safe with us. So it is Crop from Barron, Bradley Crop and Adam Barron that take the front row. And Ryan Martin and Chris Boland, Boland from Martin on row 2, Wrench from Paulie on row 3, Plasto and Cross row 4, Stevens and King row 5, Eastwood and Finch row 6, Trenwit and Cullen row 7, Wardle Barris row 8, Gladwell and Warmington row 9, Watson and Weston on row 10, with Jakajewski taking on the back of it. We have lost, it was Lidiu that we have lost on the back of it. He has not rejoined the session. It's a bit unfortunate. 21 cars is still going to be plenty. Still feel a bit sorry for Jakajewski. He was really showing some strong midfield pace. Sadly, just one mistake that wasn't his. Sadly saw the end of his race, but could well see a very spirited charge from the number 99 Mercedes.
Yeah, we absolutely could. And as you say, yeah, it was unfortunate. It was a poor rejoin. These things happen. You maybe thought everyone had gone through it, and they hadn't. And obviously, Ajewski was the unfortunate one who was caught up in that. So yeah, he'll be looking to get some redemption from the back of the grid. We know that Ajewski's probably got more pace than that position warrants, so we'll have to see how he gets on. I'm very intrigued to see what the conditions are like. Will they be any better? Will they be pretty much the same? I'm hearing from our producer Tom that the conditions appear to be actually worse than the first race.
Oh, good lord!
That could definitely spice things up. And I'm not going to say that there's almost definitely going to be an incident in the first lap on this race too. But if it does happen, I'll claim it.
Yeah, all yours.
If it doesn't happen, then I didn't say anything. That's how it works. No, I genuinely do think. I mean, the drivers have impressed me numerous times in this series, but I do think that in these conditions with a reverse grid, the drivers up to speed a little bit more, maybe false sense of security. We're likely to see some action here on lap 1, but prove me wrong once again, guys. I'm sure they will.
Is there anyone in particular you're keeping an eye on?
That's a very good question. I think Pete Plasto with his recovery run was so strong. It'd be really interesting to see how he gets on from P7. Didn't quite get the reverse grid, but I think he's got top 3 pace, personally. I also am really, really impressed by David Wrench's pace. He was really closing in for that race win eventually in race 1. So keep an eye out, I think, for David Wrench, because I think he's right up there with Ryan Martin in terms of outright pace. Yep,
and those were the two that I was exactly keeping an eye on.
There you go.
So, yeah, well called there. So then, it is Aston from Porsche, your front row for this reverse grid. The weather conditions have deteriorated. It's England, what do we expect? And we are racing then for the second time tonight here in a very soggy Thruxton. Bradley Crop takes that inside line coming through Allard. Oh, that's a very wayward Porsche. Adam Barron, how did you keep that face in the right way? It looked like you were going to sail off into the sunset. but does manage to keep the Porsche facing the right way. It is Barron and Boland united once again in the podium spot. Ryan Martin in 4th and in the Mercedes. So you've 4 different manufacturers in the top 4 as they come through Seagrave, and that's the inside line for Ryan Martin on Chris Boland. A great exit from the 86 Mercedes has got him up into podium contention, but he's got to stay there for 15 minutes. We saw how squirrely these cars get in these conditions. It is not going to be an easy feat to push towards those top spots. And look at the tails of everybody just getting very, very, very sideways.
I actually thought Barron had gone off there, Chris, but he hadn't. It's twice he's got me on this lap.
Yeah, absolutely so. So Pete Plasto has lost a position as well. So that was one driver we were keeping an eye on, but he's certainly not going to be giving up on that charge. We are looking at David Wrench, another driver we were keen to see his progress as the race continues. Of course, this is only the end of lap 1. So much spray. The rain has definitely gotten worse. Plasto back up into 7th on the inside line of Cross.
Big credit here to Bradley Kropp, who's got through this first lap unscathed with a 0.7 of a second lead over Adam Barron. As I say, Adam Barron, the first corner I thought he was gone. I think through Dick Goodwood I thought he was gone. I honestly thought Adam was getting so close to the grass, and in the wet in these conditions there's no hope once he touched the grass. But Barron must have just avoided it on both occasions, so fair play. Also, just to shout out there, fantastic move from Martin. The exit he got through Seagrave, just picking the line, getting the speed right. Boland had no chance at all, and that's finally split up the inseparables, Barron and Boland. Finally we have someone in between, and it is Ryan Martin, but let's see if Martin can now close the gap on Barron. Kropp though still got the 0.8 in front. That's great for him. I just want to shout out as well, Scott Eastwood unfortunately had an issue there in the first lap, so he's dropped back down to 19th. But other than that, Ajewski as well, 7 places up to P14. We said to keep an eye on Ajewski, he'll be looking for redemption. What a first lap from him. Great
effort there. Well done, Jack Ajewski. Let's see what he can do. Ryan Martin's gained another one, or has he? He's having an argument with Adam Barron. The Mercedes and the Porsche are side by side. They're still side by side. Not even a 10th separation. The Mercedes just manages to nose ahead of the Porsche. You can see that in the background. That's the BMW of Chris Boland fending off the advances of David Wrench. Still side by side. The Merc and I can't even speak. The Merc and the Porsche. But Barron has got to concede, and that's going to cost him all kinds of momentum. Already half a second between the two. Is that going to throw the Porsche into Chris Boland's clutches? Not quite. New fastest lap from Bradley Kropp. He's enjoying the fact that he can see 125.295. Yeah, so that shows you how much worse the conditions are. We were in the 22s in the first race. It is now in the low 25s.
I'd love to see what happened there between Martin and Barron heading into Church, because the two of them lost quite a lot of time all of a sudden to Bradley Kropp, and they were side by side all the way through. So I do wonder if they maybe went into Church side by side. Oh, Benjamin Cullen's had another off. He's dropping down. You can see him recovering there in the background. That's a real shame. So it's been a nightmare start for the season for Benjamin Cullen, a race winner from last season, of course, and Knock Hill. So he's down to 16th in this particular race. And Plasto is P7, fighting out with race 1 winner Paulie, who's gone wide. I think Paulie touched the grass there and is very lucky. I said there was a 100% chance you were off the road if you touched the grass, and I've been proven wrong once again as Paulie survives.
Finch is in trouble. John Finch is in trouble. The bright green Aston is falling, and there he is. He's got a long way off, and that's because the just pure momentum will send you sailing off into the distance. Chris Paulie's in trouble. He's made a mistake somewhere. He's also falling down through the field. So it doesn't look like Chris Paulie is going to be getting that podium he was eyeing up, as that one mistake had sent him down to 9th place. There it is, not ideal. Another fastest lap at 24.7, but never mind, 24.6 in the hands of Ryan Martin, as that's Ben Cullen on his recovery drive, just coming past Stephen Wardle in the McLaren. And I think Stephen was slightly wrong-footed, just coming through the club chicane. Now jumping up to the champ. It is Chris Boland, still nailed to the back of Adam Barron. Many, many, many laps. Those two were glued together last season. They've got David Wrench for company. I was going to say big slide from the Beamer. It's a big slide from everybody. The way that the conditions are looking. So the lap times are coming down, but they are over 2 seconds slower from what we saw in the previous race. So again, drivers, their muscle memory, they're just going to have to basically drive on their instincts all race long, and not every driver is accustomed to that. Some drivers relish just being able to throw the car around, wrestle it corner to corner. But some people just prefer to keep everything steady, as us Scotties within the McLaren has had a big moment. I think that's Church that has gone wrong for him. And that's Stephen Wardle in the aqua-coloured McLaren. Also, dude, will you leave the grass alone? It's already bitten you once. Leave it be. As we jump up to David Reto. Oh, that's Pete Plasto. Well, we say keep an eye on him. He's up into 6th when he got ahead of Dan Cross. And now it looks like he's on the back of the Mercedes of Wrench. As we're now getting the lap times into the 23s, Ryan Martin on a charge.
Yeah, the lap time's quickly coming down, especially in the case of Ryan Martin. But before he loses this lead here, he might not, but before Martin closes in on Kropp, I just want to give him some credit, because Bradley Kropp, this is a man who finished 8th in the standings last season driving the BMW, so getting used to new machinery with the Aston Martin this season, and what a start. Yes, I know the reverse grid obviously put him at the front, but it's not easy to hold it there in these very difficult conditions at Thruxton. We saw how Ryan Martin dealt with leading the first race. We spun it off. So, yeah, Bradley Kropp doing a sensational job so far. 5 laps into this race, holding on to the lead. I do think, though, he'll be a bit nervous about what he's not seeing in his mirror because of the spray, with Ryan Martin closing that gap now down to 7/10 of a second. There's number 5 off. Is that Barron again? He's just cutting it so close with the grass. And that time he went over the limit, thankfully survived, but he's lost the position now to Chris Boland. He's going to try and cut underneath again as they head through Church. But it's all under control again for Barron, is it? No, he's on the grass again. That's another big moment as Wrench this time falls down. In fact, Wrench has gone off fully onto the grass, and he's now dropping way down the order.
Oh, crikey, he nearly jumped in front of James King and Chris Pauley there in the white Mercedes. Well, we were talking about thrills and spills and spins, and we're having all of them in this race as Pauley does get up ahead of James King, as Ryan Martin's lost half a second. Oh, and that's a very, very wayward McLaren. That's Wardle again. That is going for a bit of a spin. Trying to get any kind of traction on the grass is difficult at the best of times. Dan Barris fending off the advances of Ben Cullen as they're coming through Allard now. Almost side by side. Oh, that was so close between the Aston and the Merc. As Cullen remains, Barris remains ahead of Cullen. Goes defensive immediately, coming up towards Campbell. Keeps the Mercedes at bay. Big slide. That's going to cost him, or is it? That forces the Mercedes to the outside line, coming through Cobb. Oh, what a move. Well driven from Ben Cullen.
Excellent stuff there from Benjamin. Finally getting some happiness, some joy back into this event, because it's been a disaster for him so far. But he will have been enjoying that little battle there. Great move on Darren Barris. I do wonder, by the way, just going back to a lap before, we obviously saw on board with Barron as he went onto the grass and got a little bit sideways, and then the rejoin. Then we saw Wrench dropping back. So I do wonder if perhaps Barron, who was just ahead of Wrench at that moment, is actually, I wonder if that's contributed to the off. We're about to find out, though, I believe, as we should be looking at a replay of the incident for Wrench. There we are. So, oh no, he lost it all on his own. So he's got nothing to do with the Barron Boland incident up ahead. And I tell you what, fantastic save from David Wrench to keep that thing pointing in the right direction. And from that angle through Church in the soaking wet conditions, phenomenal stuff.
Do you think there was much clinching going on when he was doing that?
I think a fair bit. I'm going to go fair bit.
Yeah. Yes, fair to middling on that one.
Even watching it was inducing certain things.
That was, speaking of David Wrench, he is on the back of James King now, so it's the Mercedes versus the McLaren as they're coming through Campbell, Cobb and Seagrave now. And again, you just see the tail of that 32 Merc. This does not want to behave. Here's John Finch that is trying to challenge Ben Weston. It is Porsche versus Aston for the battle for 16th position. The Aston trying to find his way through from the Porsche. Trying to force the mistake on the number 66. Can't get it done, though. That Apex is not proving Finch's friend there. You just saw the car get a bit unsettled as David Wrench has managed to get past James King. Here comes Barron. Where are you going, Adam Barron? How many times do we need to do? Leave the grass alone. It's not going to help you.
He's clearly on the limit in that Porsche.
But Pete Plastow, we said keep an eye on him up into 4th. He's a couple of seconds off the back of Chris Boland. As we now look at Tom Stevens, there's battles all over the place. This is what we love to see.
This is sensational. I think we might be seeing a battle for the lead fairly soon because Martin's closed that gap down now from a second to 4/10. You can see that the gap fluctuates in quite uneven ways, and that's just the wet weather. You can see there Martin committed heading into the braking zone, and you could just, you can tell from that how much he's pushing the limits there heading into Campbell. And a little mistake here and there will cost you 5-6 tenths. We talked about that in qualifying, but it just means that the racing's never going to be over as long as the driver is within a certain amount of time. I mean, Martin right now, he's now 2 tenths behind Krop, drops down to 3 tenths with that run through there, so I can definitely see a battle starting soon. And Krop, I mean, credit where credit's due. I was already saying 6 minutes in he was doing a great job. He's 11 minutes in and he's still leading this race as Ajewski takes P9 from King as well. In fact, King's got off, but Krop will be focused right now on this battle because Martin is right with him. And Boland's not far away either, 6 tenths now, so he's closing in, and we could even see a 3-way scrap for this win.
But the BMW is proving stronger in certain parts. I think the BMW probably has got some more cornering efficiency than the big old Merc and Aston ahead. But there aren't that many corners here in Thruxton. So Boland doing a great job hanging on to the coattails of the pair ahead. But yeah, Bradley Krop, exactly as you say, John, all credit to him. Had a fairly decent result in race 1. And has maintained a very solid pace up front. He's not just there, he hasn't just lucked into this position. If by now a driver of Ryan Martin's caliber would have absolutely gobbled up a driver that really didn't belong to be there. But Bradley Krop is doing a superb job within a few tenths, really, of Ryan Martin's times. Yes, of course, Ryan Martin is being very, very much fended off, but firmly and fairly by Bradley Krop. Is not doing anything really dangerous, really untoward. He's just parking his car in the perfect position to make Ryan Martin really work for it. And because he's doing that, here comes the BMW of Chris Boland. Yeah, you can see that it's the cornering efficiency of the BMW that's really helping. That's wrench. Oh no, from inside the top 5. Stay still. Now go. There you go. Oh my goodness me. We want to talk about clenching. I dare say there was a lot going on in that particular moment. It certainly was for me, talking about that particular moment. Here comes Martin again in the tyre tracks of the Aston, tries to get alongside. Can he get it done this time? He knows he's ahead, but has he left the braking too late? He manages to get it slowed down. What a move. Ryan Martin, that was superb. Fair play, Bradley Krop, you hung on as long as you could, but that was a sensational move.
Brilliant around the outside from Martin. I think Krop was maybe a bit tentative on the inside, and I understand why. If you're heading into that braking zone off the racing line, you've been forced off it, you're going to struggle to pick out the exact point. Also bearing in mind different weather conditions offline and online, and also different reference points. That braking zone is so tricky for the chicane. It's not a straight line heading in there, so it's hard to pick out a reference from the inside. I do think Krop's maybe gone slightly early on the brakes, hoping that Martin will go straight on, but Martin got it stopped, and it was a sensational move, as you say, Chris. So well done to Ryan Martin. Takes the lead with only 2 minutes to go, but a superb effort nonetheless from Bradley Krop. It's not a surprise that Krop's up there. He's a fast driver. The reason I was impressed so much was just the progression from what we saw last season from Bradley. We didn't see Bradley fighting out for many victories last season, and in his first round he's done a fantastic job so far. Although he could be about to lose his second place as well to Pete Plasto. 2 tenths of a second, it's Boland, of course, our reigning champion, who's on the tail of him. But with 2 minutes to go, it's still going to be a good result. Can he hang on? We've got Barron and Cross fighting out for P5 as well. So battles everywhere to keep an eye on.
Absolutely so. And there is Adam Barron, having just lost that position to the red and black Mercedes of Dan Cross. Right behind him is Chris Pawley, race 1 winner in the Mercedes, following his early spin, trying to recover some lost ground. This race has absolutely disappeared. Absolutely superb stuff. And that's Ben Cullen that's in trouble. Yeah, the number 16 Mercedes has had an issue on the way towards Brooklands. Hey, yeah, be careful there. I did wonder if we were going to have somebody sent into orbit there. There's Krop again, trying to fend off the advances of Boland, beg your pardon. Pete Plastow knocking on the door of the podium. Bearing in mind, in race 1, he fell nearly to the back, or near enough to the back of the field. Other than those that didn't start, were a lap down early on. Started 7th in this race, and now is staring at the back of the podium spots. So superb effort from Pete Plastow. But Ryan Martin, the checkered flag, will be greeting him next time around, and that's nearly the BMW alongside the Aston Martin. coming through Goodwood. Oh, goodness, that was close. Now the Aston Martin will get the horses galloping. But is there any opportunity left for Boland to try and usurp crop? Only a few corners left.
Yeah, not much time to make a move now. I don't think he's quite close enough, is he? It's just over, or just under half a second, but I think that's too far to make a dive bomb. We could see Polly on Baron as well, but again, it's slightly unlikely at this stage. I think that's going to be pretty much it for the top positions unless there's a big mistake.
So then through the final few turns for the final time in this race, your winner for race number 2 here at Thruxton is Ryan Martin in the Mercedes. Bradley Kropp holds on to second in the Aston. Chris Boland takes the last podium spot in the BMW. Pete Plasto, superb effort there in the Aston, takes 4th. Dan Cross in 5th. Adam Barron in 6th. Chris Porty 7th. Jackie Jewski, well, bearing in mind that he was detonated in the first race, finishes in 8th. Excellent effort there in the Mercedes. 13 positions gained for him. Well done, Jack. Tom Stevens takes 9th. James King, beg your pardon, rounds out the top 10. There's still fighting going on for the lower positions for the wooden spoon avoidance, as that is Finch, Gladwell and Eastwood all battling for 17th position, as Sean Watson has already crossed the line a lap down. So these are the last of your runners for this race. Absolutely brilliant stuff. Look at the deltas on the tower. That's how close our top runners were. So Ryan Martin, absolute class act. I do think that Bradley Kropp probably realized the move was on and that wasn't realistically his fight. So could have braked early intentionally, or was just conceding that, you know, very, very wet conditions. Discretion, better part of valor, but still a very well-deserved podium.
Absolutely, yes. Superb stuff from both of those guys. Also Chris Boland as well, after a slightly underwhelming first race relative to what we've come to expect from Chris. But yeah, great stuff from Plasto as well. An amazing recovery drive. Dan Cross, we haven't talked about too much. Another new name to the series. But Dan has been right up there at 8th place in race 1, of course, and P5 in that race too. So I think we've got, in my eyes, quite a kind of split. The top 8 drivers seem to be right on the pace, and then maybe there's a little bit of a gap. But obviously at the wet at Thruxton, that's just one variable. So we'll have to see what happens next week as well. Jack Ajewski, drive of the race, for sure. From the back of the grid to P8, superb stuff. 18.9 seconds off the win in the end, with Stevens and King rounding out the top 10. And then Beres, Wrench, Cullen, by the way, finishing 13th. That's actually one position higher than his starting position, despite spinning off about 16,000 times. So Ben Cullen, a very eventful race, bit of a roller coaster, but well done, made it to the finish, and can now enjoy a little bit of a breather after that one with Jack Trunwitt, Adrian Warmington, Ben Weston, Mark Gladwell and Scott Eastwood, who also went for a couple of spins, rounding out your top 18, and John Finch in the bright green Aston Martin, not getting lost on the green grass, again miles off the circuit, but finishing in P19.
Now, we do have Bradley Kropp and Chris Boland who have made themselves available for interview. I will drag across Mr. Kropp into here. If I can remember how, it's been a while since I've done this. So let's see. Bradley. Oh, no. There we go. I'm glad one of us is paying attention. Bradley Kropp, are you with us?
Yes, I'm with you. Hello.
Excellent stuff. Right, John, all yours.
Bradley, what an effort. I mean, we obviously saw you taking part in the championship last season, and you had a really strong season, P8 in the standings, but this week, or this evening at Thruxton, you were right up at the sharp end, right there on pace, and almost held on for a win in that second race. So talk us through it.
Yeah, well, I knew I didn't have the pace from all the practice sessions and looking at the other drivers, so I knew I just had to be careful, hit my brake markers, don't push it, just maintain and being safe through the race. They'll overtake me, maybe, and I seen Chris coming up to me from the rear quite quickly. That last lap was a bit of a struggle to hold on, but I just clinched it.
I mean, has this race given you a bit of confidence now heading into the season? Because, you know, as I said before, you've been a strong top end of the midfield runner, but I mean that reverse grid, even though you got the luck of the draw in a sense with the P6 reverse grid, and obviously a great result in race 1 anyway, you were able to hold your own. And I think pace wise, you're probably doing yourself a disservice. I think you were right up there with some of the quickest. It was maybe just Ryan Martin himself had a little bit too much for you. But does this give you confidence for the rest of the season that you might be able to pick up a few more podiums along the way?
Definitely. Like, I'm not a big wet racer, so managing to do 2 very good races and keep it clean and be competitive. Like you said, the luck on the second race was quite good, and I just focused on keeping my spray in Ryan's face so he couldn't get too close, you know.
No, it was absolutely excellent to see. And something we do as well with drivers when we speak to them in interviews, for those watching, we just like to give a little bit of an insight into your 9 to 5 and your involvement in the armed forces. Are you able to offer us a little bit of an insight?
Yeah, so I'm a sergeant in the Rifles. I was last year based in Cyprus. My new job is recruiting. So I'm in the UK, so I'm kind of 9 till 5, setting up career fairs, going to events, you know, spreading the good word about the army and all the jobs that there are to offer.
Oh, excellent stuff. Well, we're really glad to hear from you in this first round, Bradley. Congratulations on a fantastic couple of races. Good points on the championship as well, and hopefully we will hear much more from you as the season continues. Are you planning the full campaign?
Yes.
Excellent stuff. So we should hopefully then see more of you, at least on track, and hopefully in the comms box as well. But well done, and we wish you the best of luck for next week as well. That's Bradley Crop.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, and thank you for your service. Right, a name that we are very, very familiar with. Let's grab on over. Chris Boland, are you with us?
Hello again, Chris.
It's been a while. It's such a pleasure to speak to you again, Chris. How are you? How have you been?
Yeah, good, thank you. Enjoyed the break, but itching to get back at it. Yeah, and straight into the rain in a totally rubbish car, but it was fun.
You are the sole BMW runner. So what was the thinking behind that?
So did a bit of pre-season, knocking around in all the cars, and the Merc and the Aston were a dead heat for me. So I could either stick with what I won with last year, or try something new. And as it turns out, a lot of the field thought that the Merc was good as well. And I've been driving the Beamer quite a lot in one of the iRacing championships, so I know how to drive it fairly well. So I thought I'll try and be the odd one out and try and do it with something a bit different.
Well, different was always kind of your style.
I'll take that as a positive.
Absolutely so. Do you think the wet weather really hinders the BMW particularly?
The first 2 laps, yes. It's abysmal on the first 2 laps. I think Ryan got the jump on me on the second race just then, just purely because every time I was putting the gas on, it was trying to spit me out sideways. So you have to bring it in really slowly. Once it's up to speed and you know where its limits are, it's not too bad.
Absolutely fair enough. So yeah, I was a little surprised because several real front runners from last season have stuck with their machinery. I was a bit surprised to see you go with BMW. BMW wasn't particularly popular last season. We had a few more of them. So I wondered if you'd been put up to it. I wonder if someone bet you to go the Beamer this time.
If only I could have made a bit of money out of this. No, it was purely off the fact that I've actually been driving it in one of the it's the one make BMW production series on iRacing, so I've been using it for that. So against other BMWs, it's obviously fair racing. But like I say, I've been driving it, so I know how to drive it. It's just putting it up against all these other machines and seeing how we come out at the other end.
Well, it looked like cornering efficiency was a real strength of the BMW, certainly from what we were seeing tonight. So Silverstone GP next time around, that sounds like it's going to play much more into the car's strengths.
Yep, and you're absolutely right. Unfortunately, I'm going to be away for that one. I'm going to be in Italy, so I missed that round. And then there's potential for missing a few more rounds as well during the season, which is a bit of a shame. But I'm going to aim to get to as many as I can.
Literally duty calls, and as before, we thank you for your service. And for those that are potentially joining us for the first time this season, or those that possibly didn't get the explanation, can you give us a brief on what your 9 to 5 is?
Yeah, so currently I'm a weapons technician, currently working on 12 Squadron Typhoon. I've been there I've been at Coningsby for nearly 15 years now, so working on Typhoon solely, bouncing around all the different squadrons. But my current role, I'm in charge of the training cell, so I deliver all the training to the new guys who arrive out of their basic training.
Brilliant stuff. Well, it's a shame that we won't see you for every round, but we will most certainly enjoy your company for the rounds that we see you on. Brilliant podium. Well done. And it's great to have you back. Thank you very much, Chris Boland.
Thanks, guys.
And that is going to wrap it up for tonight's festivities. Thank you very much to those that have been with us throughout tonight's broadcast. It's a great pleasure to have your company. Thank you very much, John Monroe, for joining me in the commentary box. As always, you weather my company well, sir.
Oh, it's been great, and I knew it would be great. Obviously, we thoroughly enjoyed ourselves last season, and these drivers put on such a good show for us. So it's just a joy to commentate on, and we saw it again here at Thruxton. Maybe not the close, door banging racing that we see in touring car racing at Thruxton. Maybe the rain, to blame for that, but still very exciting nonetheless. And obviously, with a full season ahead of us, we're going to see a huge range of circuits, a huge range of conditions. And what I'm really impressed by is the strength of depth at the top of the field this season. I think there's a number of drivers that can win each of these races, and throwing in the reverse grid, it's going to be truly exciting. So yeah, big thanks to you as well, Chris, and obviously Tom behind the scenes as well. Thank you to Tom on production. Thanks to all the organisers of the event, and I'm looking forward to next week.
And to our drivers for putting on a fabulous show to kick off what is going to be a superb 10-round season. As mentioned, we head to the home of British Motorsport. We head to Silverstone for the full GP layout next week. We hope to see you there. Until next time, thank you very much and good night.